Hello there, welcome back to Simon's Shed and welcome to this first in a new series of videos where I service and repair my locos, and we're starting right back at the beginning with the first loco I ever bought from a model shop somewhere in central Birmingham in around 2013. So it's a good 9 years old now, and sadly this Graham Farish Class 24 in BR Blue is no longer running. It slowed down and just stopped, and now every time I put it on the track it shorts out the controller, so something drastic has gone wrong. But as you can see from the detail, this is a very nice loco, very highly detailed. Particularly not appreciated it myself really. The detailing on the bogies and the underframe in general is fantastic. It's not till you take real close-ups and zoom in until you actually appreciate it. Remember, we're talking about something that's around 25 millimeters tall here, so we are very much zoomed in. The only issues I can see with it are the fundamental issue I think with this loco. You can see the gap, particularly at the front and the back, where the body lifts off. It's a blessing and a curse really. It does mean the body comes off easily, but the way it sort of presses on and connects to the lights is the one sort of weakness of this loco. Unless it's pressed on perfectly, the lights just don't work, and they sort of intermittently go out, and it creates a little gap if it's not completely pressed down, which it very rarely is, because it's there's nothing sort of holding it. But yeah, really impressed with the detail of the loco and the way it runs. I mean, some of these little warning logos and printing are, you know, a couple of millimeters tall, so really is quite impressive. And as I say, the running up until the point that it broke has been fantastic. It's very tolerant of dirty track, and it runs very quietly and smoothly. So it's always been the loco that I use to pull the cleaning train and test anything out, which probably means it's been used more than any other, and it is 9 years old, so perhaps not surprising that this is the first one to break. But as we open it up, you'll see more perhaps on why it broke. So let's get started. Very important, I found, was you need some kind of magnifying glass, and I've got one of these headsets with the magnifying lenses on, and it's got an LED on the front, so it lights things up as well. I found that absolutely invaluable in this process. And other than that, we've just got some oil. I'm using the DAP oil and just screwdrivers and kitchen roll to clean things up, and an old toothbrush. But other than that, no real sort of specialist tools needed. So let's begin the disassembly. First step is very easy. As I mentioned, the body just pulls off. You can see it's not held by anything. Those are the contacts for the lights that I mentioned that are a little bit temperamental. We'll give those a clean and give them some contact cleaner. And inside we can see the circuit board and the wires going to the light contact points, and you can see 2 screws in the top of the circuit board, which we'll need to remove shortly. Underneath the loco we've got the 2 bogies, and they simply pull to remove them, and we can start to see perhaps what went wrong in terms of how grimy this is inside. In the gears there's sort of bits of static grass and fluff and old oil that's clogging things up, so the motor has obviously been working harder than it needed to be. So we pull the bogies off. There we go. That doesn't look good. I suppose it's Impressive that it's lasted 9 years if that's the state of it inside. So I'm glad I started this series. I'll make sure I get the other locos serviced. So there and there are the screws that we need to remove. Take those out. Now don't pull the logic board up too far at this stage because the wires are still attached and they're quite delicate. We need to unclip those later. In fact, let's do that now. So there's tabs there and there, and you need to push inwards on the actual little board and pull outwards on the little tab and it'll just come off. Well, first of all, I guessed that the problem was the DCC chip. So I bought another DCC chip and popped that in, and it didn't work. That turned out to be an expensive mistake. I'd advise you not to do that. Get to the root of the problem first, because I actually destroyed that DCC chip, it turns out. My next guess was the logic board that we've just removed, but the actual problem turned out to be the motor. So to get to that, we need to take these two sort of plastic C-clips off. And yeah, there's a bit of fluff in there. Let's get rid of that. We'll give everything a good clean up later on. Then the sort of running plate is just clipped in. These are slightly fragile, so be careful here. A clip either side at either end is all it takes, and it then just comes off. And the final thing holding it together is a screw here in the bottom, which screws into a sort of square plastic plate, and there is a spacer in between, so make sure you don't lose that little square plastic plate. There we go. And be careful at this point because it will all just open up like that. So you can see inside quite a lot of gunk built up. So the actual issue, applying power directly to the motor, nothing happens. So we have our culprit. The motor has completely shorted out, and in fact applying power to the motor, so here's the new one, applying power to the motor shorted out the DC controller, so it was obviously the problem. So at this point we start cleaning up and applying oil to in the appropriate places, such as the motor. This is the new motor worm gear. There is a plastic piece that fits into three little holes on the motor. It'll only go one way up, so easy to get that bit right. And here you can see a little dog bone sort of drive shaft that goes into the other side where there's another worm gear, and this is that little spacer I was talking about, so don't lose that. Those halves go together. A little bit fiddly to get everything perfectly aligned, but the running board won't go back on unless everything is perfect. At this point you will note that the red writing on the motor is facing upwards. This is very important. I ended up having to take this back apart several times because the loco was going in one direction but the lights were in the other direction. So when it was going forward, the red lights were at the front and the white lights were at the back. Tried to fix this via a DCC setting, but there just isn't one. You can reverse the direction, but it also reverses the lights. So it's very important not to do what I did and get the motor the wrong way up. As you can see, it's the correct way at this point. What must have happened is I tried to put it together and either dropped it or it wasn't quite sitting together properly, so the motor came out again, and inadvertently I've turned it upside down. So we put the clips back on, and the little square sort of retaining plate and the screw goes back in, I've given the worm drive a thorough clean with a toothbrush and a drop of oil, and we have success. So that motor is turning those worm drives now, and we very simply clip the running board back on. Just while I'm doing that, I should mention that the motor, as you probably spotted from the packaging, was from BR Lines, which is farishspares.co.uk, very well known and well respected supplier of Graham Farish spare parts. The logic board I got from Bachmann-spares.co.uk, which is the official Bachmann spares department. But as I say, it turns out I didn't need the logic board. I put the new one in anyway, as you can see here. Slide it back on, make sure the legs of this board are outside the motor tabs and connecting and touching it, otherwise it's not going to go anywhere. And put the 2 screws back in the logic board, because that's how the power gets up from each side of the chassis, so that's also very important. And gently clip the light contact boards back in. A small confession, I did pull off one of the wires and had to solder it back on, but that went back on okay. Make sure you neaten up the wires, give all the contacts a clean. Now, cleaning the bogies. I spent a long time doing this just because they were so clogged up, and the best way, as you can see here, is the very fine sort of curved needle nose pliers. Just cleaned it, pulled as much out as I could, gave it another wipe, and just kept going until it was completely clear. Yeah, I did cut a lot out there, but you can see those are all clean now, and a fresh drop of oil on each. And yeah, well worth doing, but it did. That bit probably took the longest out of all of it. They simply press back in. You can't really go wrong with that bit. Pop the body back on, and hope that those connectors are all touching. And let's give it a try on DC. So we haven't put the DCC chip in. I really would advise not doing that until the last minute and you know everything's working, because if you do blow them up like I did, that's, well, it was a 30 quid lens silver mini, so I won't be making that mistake again. But we can see it runs. Hallelujah. So next I popped the DCC chip back in and took it back to the layout. Gave it a quick run in because it's a new motor, half an hour in each direction. For reference, I reprogrammed the DCC chip with the following settings. So I played with a lot of settings, but in the end I only changed CV values 3, 4 and 5, which is accelerator, brake and max voltage. So accelerator CV3 I set to 8. That just gives you a bit of a delay as it builds up speed and makes it look a bit more realistic, but not a ridiculously long delay. I don't like that. And if you've got any kind of dirty track, it just tends to, the locos tend to stutter. Brake, CV value 4. I set that to 4, which is lower, and the reason for that is if I shut the power off quickly, I don't want much of a delay until the loco stops. There's probably a reason why I've shut the power off quickly, and that is to avoid a crash, a derailment or a short circuit as it's heading up a point the wrong way. So I try and just smooth that out myself with the controllers and just set that to 4 so it stops nice and quickly. And CV value 5 I set to 188. That's the max voltage, and that was just to take some of the top speed off because it was a bit silly how fast it could go, so just limited it to a more realistic speed. So good to see it back running again. I did learn a lot during this video, and hopefully you've learned something too, but if not, I certainly did, which is mainly don't just stick a new DCC chip in if there's a major problem, because if something has shorted out, you're going to cost yourself a lot of money. So that's a medium speed pass, looking good. And don't just start buying parts. Essentially wasted 20 quid buying a new logic board which wasn't really needed. Really try and diagnose the actual fault, the root cause first. Magnifying glass or magnifying headset goggle type things, absolutely essential for N-gauge, I would say. And you hear a bit of a noise at slow speed. I think that's just the voltage cutting in and out. It runs nice and smoothly, it just doesn't sound the best, but I don't think it's the motor or the gears, I think it's the DCC. So yeah, a lot of lessons learned. It really wasn't as hard as I thought, or as scary as I thought it would be I did completely disassemble the thing and managed to get it all back together again and running. Definitely hold the loco next to the table, preferably with some kind of tray with edges on, because if something drops off, it'll be, especially in N-gauge, a tiny little screw or a little part. You don't want that to have much distance to drop and go and bounce off across the room, because you'll never find it again. Take your time, get a magnifying glass, and don't leave it 9 years between buying a loco and doing its first service, because that way you might not actually burn the motor out in the first place. So yeah, I will be doing some more of these. Next up, I suppose if we're doing this in chronological order, will be the Deltic DP1 prototype that I got with the Merseyside Explorer set from Farish, and had a sneaky look inside that. And it does look quite similar to this, quite familiar, so everything I've learned on this loco should be very useful to service that one. But yeah, let me know what you thought in the comments, and please like the video. It helps to get it out there to more people, and hopefully get more people into the hobby. So please like and subscribe, and yeah, I'll leave it there for now. Thanks very much for watching. I'll see you soon.